we'll have a very heavy lunch and with a heavy session, but we'll manage it very well. I'm quite sure Ayush, because I met him in earlier peer review training session also, he could have taken through practical sessions. I will cover you more on probably the standards per se and what we need to do from a peer review perspective. Just to understand, how many of your firms have gone through the peer review? Okay, quite a few. So you would have seen the other side, how you would have gone through the peer review. Now you are going to do the peer review of other PUs, in fact. Slides apart, see what is more important if you look at the two sessions, what I am going to cover. First session is more on all your technical sessions. You can think it's a refreshing for us also in terms of doing the work for our firm, and same way when you're going to go for a peer review of the other entities which has been allocated to you. More of course, what is the accounting framework, what you're going to cover. Then you will have your technical and professional standards, what is going to be there, and finally what's the compliance is required, why compliance is required, and what is expected from the PU perspective also, from the peer review perspective also. I think these are all quite known. What all gets covered under the professional and the technical standards is all your accounting standards, auditing standards, guidance note, and whatever you have, your code of ethics in terms of more on the independence perspective, and overall in terms of the fees that needs to be charged, all that, those gets covered, and then other compliance. See, one important aspect here is, again, the restriction is not only to your accounting standards or auditing standards, although there are other compliances that we need to look at. It could be from a tax perspective or from the regulation perspective or FEMA related. Wherever the work has been handled, as Ayush was also mentioning, it's not getting restricted to your statutory audit and tax audits. Any other works where an attestation function has been there, where the units would have got generated, all that gets covered. And again, it's a holistic sampling that you need to select in terms of the engagement the firm or the proprietor would have done. If it's a partnership firm, LLP, the respective partners, what engagements, the sample size, that's how you'll have to select. Again, he explained about the certification. As and when it goes, I'll tell you even what is expected, as few of you already gone through the peer review, what they expect, because normally for an audit, we do the documentation very well, but when it comes to a smaller entities or a certification, there might be some gaps which we should address from our side also, and whenever you go for a peer review. So what key standard gets covered here? One, of course, your technical standard, all what we were telling about the AS, SA, and all the guidance note, all that, how it has been followed by the PU. That is also very important. As you look at the Annexure 2, that's where we need to talk about it. If I give an example, materiality. How does the PU decide on the materiality? See, again, the question is a judgment and what is required by the standard. We'll have to go with the standard, because you can't go for a peer review and start asking them why have you not qualified, why have you taken an emphasis on matter, because that's a purely judgment of the professional who would have done the audit. It's more of how is he complied with the entire ICA regulations in terms of the technical aspects. Then your professional, again, it's all institutes driven, independence, your code of ethics, how it is being followed. If you have gone through the Form 1, again, just to reiterate, as Ayush was also telling, Form 1 is your first source of documents. So the moment you give a confidential Form 2 sign to the PU and the ICA, the first step what your PU will do is he'll going to share you the Form 1. The best start would be the Form 1. Go through the Form 1. Of course, you'll have the annexures of whatever the engagements you have done, but a lot of contents would come from the Form 1. Wherever there is no clarity, because some cases what they do, they just answer yes, no, not applicable. You need more clarity, go back to the PU. Talk to them or go meet them or call them, get a clarity, because unless you don't get a clarity of how the PU functions, you can't only restrict your sample and just say that, okay, I've reviewed the documents, everything is okay, and sign. Few more will get covered as we keep moving on. Then of course your regulatory guidelines, it could be in terms of whatever the other services they would have done. Of course, if urine is not generated, it doesn't come under the attestation function. Like the alignment with the local laws, all that, if they are given any opinion or any of such views, that gets covered. Again, as I was telling, identify the accounting standard. Now, take a scenario, what normally we come across is, if it's an India's client, they have done the work. Now, how is that disclosure presentation, is it taken care? Now, if I give a specific example, an audit has been conducted by a PU where it's a first time India's transition. Now, what is more important is how the transition has been done. Is a 3 balance sheets done, 2 balance sheet, 2 P&L is been done. How is the disclosure? Is a presentation is taken care? That also gets covered under the peer review. That's why the sample helps us to not go and cover the entire thing, but that will give you a direction of how the engagements have been handled by the respective PU. So that's where it gets covered in terms of your audit perspective or any of the engagement they would have signed. Then of course the documentation, that's one of the critical aspects, because here again not only the standard on auditing, you'll have to look at how the work papers are maintained, how is the checklist, is it been uploaded on time, who is preparing it, who is reviewing it, what is the role of a partner, or if there are intermediate like a managers or senior managers or director, then the partner, how is this entire thing is getting documented. That's very important, because one, starting is your work papers. Then second, how is the review done by the team who's part of the work. Then how is the manager or who's in charge, he's been reviewing it and documenting how is his comments coming. Then more important, what is the partner's time in the engagement. See, it might look like why so much of a detail we need to do, because that is when you will come to know whether what opinion they have expressed is it backed up with a proper documentation and a review process, not like just taking some data from the client and signing off the balance sheet. Then of course, as I was telling, few of the assumptions you can always look in, or whatever the judgment, of course not question it, but understand what assumptions they would have taken or some conclusion they would have. Now if I give an example, as a part of review, we might have to see what all their final issue memo, how it has been concluded also. There, if somewhere you feel something should have come into the audit report, you can always check with them, how did they conclude and said that this need not be reported. That's more of a judgment, but more important is how is it getting documented finally. That's entire crux of it. More important, again, the independence, of course, in the second session when we talk about the quality control, all that, how the independence plays a role is very important. How do you ensure that the independence are taken care at the engagement level? We'll cover that, but what is more important is how are you obtaining, what is your policy for independence? Do you have a policy for independence to define, okay, what all is required? Again, all these are driven by the, if you look at the entire manual of the peer review and the guidelines, implementation guide, all these details are there. They have given the templates, what is needed to be maintained. If the PO are following that perfectly okay, where it is not there, the question comes, how is it been ensured that the independence is being taken care? That's more important. Then, as I was telling about the recording the whatever the observations and the transparency in which they would have documented also needs to be done. It's all just part of the compliance. Again, in terms of the conclusion, what they would have done for the audit, more particularly from the compliance perspective, how they have concluded, is there any qualifications in the report or any emphasis is there, we can always look at from where it is coming. Is it coming from the final discussion with the client? Is it been discussed at the respective or the appropriate level of client? And it's been documented, that also needs to be covered here. Of course, all of us know why compliance plays an important role, and how the PU is also educating clients also makes a difference, because if any aspects are there which the client has to be made aware of it, it's always a good process. All that when you look at the Form 1, all that you will get to know in terms of how the engagement process has been handled, including the team composition, the partners, training, all that gets covered. Of course, AQMM is more of a detail that will give you more from the perspective of the technology the firm has been implementing, what is the entire hierarchy of their work, how is the documentation, everything gets covered in the AQMM also. Of course, the final is whatever the opinion as an auditors or as a chartered accountant we all know it's a stakeholders' confidence that comes in. More particularly if it's an investor driven, it could be government or any of the private limited or a listed entity, it all matters. We'll probably spend a little more time on this slide. This gives a more of the entire quality management. How does your quality management, the PU is supposed to take care. Again, for you, nothing to get, say how do I come to know? Your form 1 is the basic things where they need to give all this data. That's the reason I've said, wherever you need more clarity, get the details from them. Don't accept just if they say yes, no. Even though normal cases they say just mention yes, no, other. Where you want more of inputs, take it from them. Because before you select the samples and start doing the peer review, this would play an important role to know in what environment the engagements have been signed, how the attestation has been done, how is the entire structure of the team is involved in the work. Everything will come to know what is the role of the leadership. Of course, when we go into the second session, it will have more importance on the leadership role or as owners of the firm, what role we need to play. Right from their level to the extent of the PU level also we need to look at. So when you look at the firm level objective, what is more important is when you were looking at, when I was also telling you, when you look at the AQMM, why does it talk about the vision, values, all that? Now if you look at, say Bayam is supposed to look at this. Bayam is supposed to know about the firm, do the firm have a website or not, or how do they communicate their code of conduct. Might say that why I don't, when I'm supposed to do an engagement review, that too with a limited time I have to do a review of a PU, why should I know? Because that will give you a direction in which the firm's objective of ensuring that the quality control is percolated to the last member of the firm. That's how the entire understanding will come to you, and also you will know in what structure the firm is there and what is their value system, what is their culture, in terms of ensuring that the quality is maintained for the work that has been rendered. So that will give you a direction. Again, when we say AQMM, it's a very detailed rating is there. Again, not that you should question the rating, but when you verify the documents, you have to give a rating. So one, there will be a self-rating by the PU. When you go through it, when they say that, okay, I have a training calendar, I have a training session, you need to go back and ask them, I want to see the list of the training calendar, how it's been circulated. For example, they say they have an HR policy implemented. Now, one, seeing the policy. Second, how is this communicated to all the members of the firm also needs to be done. Why this is required? Because you're going to validate the rating what they are giving, and majority the AQMM comes when they want to take listed entities or larger entities audits. That's where the AQMM has to be filled. Now, like that, when you look at the form 1 also, when the details are filled in, it's more important that you go back and check on what basis the data has been filled. It should not be like a theoretical questionnaire, because it's not something like they just mention it theoretically, but practically it is not followed. So that's where your firm level quality objective. So what is your objective of the firm will get defined from what is their the vision or the value system that they have built in the organization. It could be a small PU or a larger PU, perfectly okay, but what is that they have built in? Then of course the next is on the risk assessment and responses. How do they identify when the engagement? Now take a scenario, there is a risky certification that needs to be given. There is no appropriate supporting document. Now has the PU gone ahead and issued a certificate? What is the backup for that? That's where exactly I was trying to tell. Certificate, don't go in a assumption that there is a certificate signed, you didn't generate it, that should suffice. In fact, if I give you a simple, when our firm went through the peer review, the multiple questions they asked for a certificate was right from where is the request from the client that there is a certificate requirement. It started from there. Second, what is the purpose? Where is that mentioned in the client communication that for what purpose it is being certificate is required? Then they immediately went and linked it. Okay, this is a purpose for which the client has asked you, have you mentioned this in the certificate? Third, they said, where is the fees? agreed with the client, can we see the proposal? Proposal or mail communication, whatever is required. Then fourth, they came back, shows the workings based on which what you are wishing. Even if I give a simple example, there were cases where a net worth was given based on an audited financial. They said perfectly okay, what is the document you have it? Is it, for example, you gave a net worth certificate for 3 years. Now, take a scenario, you have done the audit for only for 2 years, the previous third year was, or the first year was done by some other auditor. Have you obtained the document? Or are you just relying that it's an audited, you're just issuing a certificate? Finally, they ask, where is the MRL for the certificate? Even for whatever certificate they issue, it's a mandate, even the ICA guidelines also tell. Now, these are the level of documentation we need to review. It's not just saying that a certificate, one-page certificate. Why not to name some of the peer reviews we have done? Fortunately, unfortunately, we have seen cases where they don't have a copy of the signed document, which is, we said, how is that possible? Because, see, it's not a question of relationship with the client, where is the documentation then kept? Again, going back, all this is needed. Even if I give one more example, now tax audit, we always say tally backup is there. If the books of accounts maintain tally backup will have all the details. Why you should have a workings? Not agreeable. They'll say, okay, what is a backup for your tax audit? You are giving it true and correct, not true and fair again there. Now, where is the workings for this? From where have you taken the reporting points? They ask, where is the MRL for tax audit? And where are the certificates taken for the tax audit? Where is the workings? Where is your TDS workings? Where is your GST? Even in a case where the stat audit is done. So this is a level of checking is required, but again, what is more important? It's a sample verification. So what is very key for you is, when you pick up a sample, first sample, do a thorough review. That will give you a comfort whether the documentations are there, the way they're explaining, where they are able to organize the data faster, or are they transparent saying, okay, this particular details I need some time to retrieve, maybe because the team is saying, or maybe the partners would have left or changed, possibilities. But that will give you an indication what level of confidence you can get when you're going to undertake the peer review process. So again, the risk assessment, as I was telling, how are they assessing the risk in matter of the attestation they are going to do? What is the response? Again, the documentation linked to your essay, 350, 300, all that. How is the documentation maintained? Independence monitoring, as I was telling, you need to have, based on the code of ethics, you need to have a document. In fact, it goes to the extent saying that for each audit, you should have an independence declaration obtained from the entire team, including the partner. Some of them follow that, some of them follow an annual practice to ensure that, and they do visit. In fact, even if you look at the independent policy, that should define all this. How are you going to obtain the independence in case there is a conflict comes? What is the action that would be taken? How is the engagement team will be informed? All this needs to be there as a document. And I see, practically we don't deny, some of the smaller firms might not have, but what stops them having the best practice? Because as they keep growing, they can start implementing, but these are all requirements of the regulation. These are all the ICA guidelines under which it is very clear that we need to have all this on records before we sign off any document. Again, engagement quality review predominantly depends, like if you take an audit review as a sample, how did it start? Right from your pre-audit, is there a discussion? Is the team met the client? How is the discussion done? How is the review done? Where is the documentation? Where is the work paper? Where are the representation letters? Where are the deliverables review? All this gets covered. Now, how is that being done by the PU also does it. See, it's in other way, if you look at, it's always a reflection of us only. Now, are we following all this? If you are following all this, it's always easier to go and expect it from the PU, or end of the day, this is what is required to be done. Now, take a scenario, it is not there, it has to get reported in one or the other, because end of the day, where is the confidence comes to the institute side also when we have got engaged as a peer review, saying that with whatever samples are verified, this is what is my findings. That's where it makes all the difference. Then again, annual evaluation of system, how best is your process of, I would say, the review, documentation, attestation, your HR policy. It includes all your entire system. How is the engagement conclusion? Because each year on year, the work keeps adding. your attestation increases, your certification, new works will come. How is that all this being taken care? Also forms part of your annual review. All of us know what independence and ethics needs to be followed. It's always the safeguard against the threats, what could be there, how is that, again if you look at the form 1, all this you are supposed to explain it. How is that they are taking the independence, how are they ensuring that there is no independence conflict, even from a member who was part of the engagement team, all that gets covered here. That's where your form 1 will have the details. Second, we'll have to look at their independence policy, independence declaration, samples, whatever select, how it has been ensured that independence is being documented. Then partners rotation. Again, if you look at one, of course, is also a policy how you should have your partners rotation. Again, from a client perspective, many cases it also comes saying that there should be at least 2 years, 3 years, there should be a partners rotation. If you take an example of an NBFC, they in fact say that every 3 years there should be a partners rotation. Same way, what is the policy of the firm? That's what is it like? Okay, there are 2 partners. One partner has been doing audit from last 6 years. Now, what I do rotation, and the next I'll tell all the 6 years I have signed. I'll tell the other partner to sign. Perfectly okay. But what is more important is the other partner signing or is he doing an independent review? That's more important. So is he acting as an independent partner or is he just acting as a signing partner? So these are the things you should look in, because that's where your inquiry with the PU makes a difference. How are they doing this? How is that ensure that the independence is taken care? How is the partner rotation managed? And how it is it in a paper document or is it in essence followed? Again, prohibited service, all we know, conflict of interest, if anything is there, it should also not be done. Again, wherever the conflict comes, 100% it should not be done. How is that being done? All this again, as I keep telling, form 1 will have all these details. How is that being taken? Again, the question comes again here is at the leadership responsibility. Is at the partners level, are they ensuring that they don't want to have any conflict of interest? Not that some regulators will identify or some peer reviewer will identify or the QRB will be identified, but in the sense they don't want to get into it. That makes all the difference. Again, independence confirmation I was talking about, it could be engagement basis, it all depends on the policy, or it could be an annual exercise where they circulate to the. In fact, when they did our firm's peer review, the 3 years what they did, they took the data from us. They said, okay, give me samples of the independence declaration that employees said. Of course, we had done it through the online digital form. Second, they said, where is the partner's independence declaration? We were able to provide. Then they said, okay, for these each years, how many count of members were there? How many have submitted a declaration? If few of them have not submitted, what is the reason? Cases where are there, like for example, your articles have gone for exam leave, or by the time the independence declaration came, they have left and gone. But what they expect was, have you done your verification properly on the completeness? That's how the checking is required. That's the reason it's more important the first day when you go for a peer review, are you investing in all this? Very important. So that's why you have to set your expectations very clear. Prepare yourself and go. Go through the form 1, go through the data, go through the annexure A where they have given your engagements, what all they have done, what is the service. Again, you did reconciliation. See, that's the best part for us in terms of ensuring the completeness. There are differences in UDIN reconciliation. Go back to them, tell them you want a reconciliation, because this is all the pure responsibility. They have to give to us to facilitate for us to only focus on the review part. Then again, fees related independence, all of us know it has been maintained. Again, SA 230, your sample procedure, how they are taking care of the samples for the verifications, transactions review, or at the level of the verification needed for the audit. Then your planning, execution, review evidence, how is it been done, who are all involved in the planning, because all this is required. Again, it's not a question whether it's a small partnership firm they have done a proprietor audit, or if they have done a small private limited. Challenges are there, perfectly agreeable, but what is more important is also document is there. All of us know documents have to speak. That's how a firm has to do their quality management. Same as a peer reviewer, we have to ensure that this is there in the document. Of course, any gaps are there, you can always tell them to arrange it so that there is no other go. You can't tell that we understand practical all difficulties. See, nobody will come to the rescue if there is no adequate documentation, because we are signing the balance sheet, we are expressing an opinion. No explanation will be agreed by anybody, in fact including the regulators or reviewers. Nobody will accept, say that this was a practical issue, the client was like that. Nothing will even see, it's only a matter of how they have been even educating the clients. Give another classic example. Bank confirmations, all of us know, sometimes when you ask bank confirmation, the first response from the client is, last time nobody has asked. Or why is this required? I'll give you bank statement, I have all that one. But is it required? Mandatorily required. So this is how the entire system, how they are building, how they are setting the expectation from the client also makes the difference. Then all your work papers cross-referencing, having the lead sheet, how you are mapping to the balance sheet, the numbers, what are your issues identified, how are they concluding, is this being maintained? And those are of course always the suggestions we can give it to the PU, saying that this is what is expected from my documentation. Let them implement it. In some cases it's not that they know the way they can go back, but give them as a proactive measure, saying this is what is required for you. Agreeably, because many of the small firms, they might be going through the peer review for the first time. When you identify the gaps, give them. Of course, it all gets covered in your preliminary findings also, because where we've put our recommendation, they also have to put their responses, saying that what is that they're going to do. So one way they're going to accept, saying that going forward, this is what I'm going to do. So maybe whenever you are going to do a peer review for the second cycle, you can always go back and ask them in the first cycle, whatever the peer review then, what was their findings, what is that assurances they given, like how we have the C&AG assurance, so that similarly you can always get the data from them, understand whether they are in implementation, are they serious in implementation, or just for the sake of explaining they have been giving it. Again, the work papers retention, very important, because when you go for smaller firms, always this comes saying that the available team is not there, it is there in the drive or something. Again, as I told you, how is the retention, documentation retention makes all the difference. Because who's asking for peer review? Now, of course, at a phase where it is becoming mandatory, but still there are a lot of firms voluntarily they are asking for peer review. That means they also has to be ready for the peer review. And again, you can always inquire, are they using any tools or any software, because if the data have been routed through the software, we also have to review through the software, not just take the extract from the software. This is where all this data will come in your Form 1 and AQM, all this gets captured. I think this we have covered quite a bit, again talking about your planning and the risk assessment, how it is being done, how is, again, important written form, that's what orally all of them will explain. In fact, they will tell, this client I've been doing from last 5 years, I know them, owners very well. Perfectly okay. Good, that's a good rapport they have got with the clients, perfectly okay. That's the reason client is also continuing, apart from the fees part, they are continuing with you, all good. But what is required? They are also members, we are also members, but the documentation has to be maintained. There is no exception to that. There is no exception. Rules will apply for any of this. It has to be maintained. Again, fraud consideration in case anything is there. Again, it all depends how is the documentation done. Again, most cases, always what you can go and look at is there a proper representations taken by the PU to ensure that no frauds have been reported by the company, or no frauds has been identified by the company, because those would be the backup. Unless and until something you have come across through the review in the audit, otherwise most cases it's based on the information of the client. Again, samplings, we have talked about it, what is the basis of selection of samples. When you select a sample, you understand how they are doing the sampling. Could be through the system, software, or whatever the random sampling they are doing, understand that, and based on that, is it getting documented, getting verified is more important. Then estimate fair value, all that whatever they would have taken the assumptions in from the client side, client would have taken, how is that they are verified. It could be your actuarial valuation or certain policies or estimation could have got defined. Is there any contradiction? That's where I was telling, in some cases, if it's an India's client or a larger client, the PU is doing for the first time. More important, have they taken care of all this? Because generally the process, what happens, they do, previously this was done, currently this is what is being done. Just see whether those cases are not done. There is an adequate way of review being taken care. Going concern, all of us know. Normally, take a scenario, you find a client where the net worth has got eroded, cash flows issues are there. When you go through the cash flow statement and the balance sheet, all that, and as such, there is no mention in the audit report. The only option is, you can't only tell the client has, the PU has obtained a representation. What is the documentation that is done to ensure that this has been, the risk has been mitigated? Again, reporting compliance, more important. I know, as I was telling, it all depends how we do the audit and the attestation, how we expect from the PU. What is more important is the latest audit reports have been implemented and taken care. It could be your SA 700 report, or it could be tax audit report, or your certifications, all that. Is there being followed? How is that? Again, we'll dwell it into more in the second session, where it talks about more predominantly on the training aspect. How are you giving the training? How are you updated, right? From the partners level to the members level, qualified, who is there in the firm, how are they getting equipped with the latest changes? How it is important gets covered. That's where it will define you. Again, going back, Form 1, all these details gets there. So maybe before any of you start with the peer review process, all of you will start getting allocated. You're being given with the peer review manual, go through the Form 1. It will give you a lot of details, what is required to be covered as a part of our review, which will give the comfort to anybody. Again, of course, it's an independent review what we will be doing. It's an independent opinion what we give. It's not an opinion, more of a report of our findings, what we give, preliminary findings and the final report. Then aim for improvement, as I was telling, give feedback. There's nothing, not that everything, though it gets captured in the written form, give feedback to the PU saying that this is what is expected. This is what, unless there is a serious documentation issue or there is no clarity, nobody has reviewed, they have just signed it. Those cases, there is no other option. We have to report in the peer review. But wherever there are some gaps, here and there, some documentation gaps, or some documents they took time to retrieve or organize for it, give them this is how it should be done, what they can do. It might be a 10-member firm, it might be a 5-member, it might be 50-member. Those inputs will help them to ensure that in the next cycle they implement all that. Then of course impartiality will have to maintain, as I was telling. We have to ensure that whatever the quality and the guidelines of the peer review are being maintained. Again, keep in mind, after we all of us submit our peer review reports, Institute can come back and ask us, how did you conclude on it, what documents you verified, how did you put this particular observation in the report, or how did you check the samples, did you enhance the samples based on your observation. They can come, and few of the cases they do come back. They come back, how did you conclude it on this point? Okay, you are telling this is your verification part of the data. Have you obtained the copies of the data? Because of confidentiality, anyway we sign and give it to the PU, but have you obtained the copies, or did you just took the oral explanation from the PU, or is it been documented? So those scenarios are also very much there. That's the reason sometimes allotting the peer review certificate to the PU takes time, because all this will be happening. Some cases they go back to the PU also. If anything they are not able to explain, or they are not cooperating, which is normally a lesser chance, but depending on the circumstances, both ways it can come. And of course, more to all of us, considering that we are going to do an independent review and that there is a dependency on us also. Again, not fault finding. Don't go in that mode saying that I'm going there and going to only do a fault finding. Do the independent review, what is required, identify, put it across your point, take their explanation, which is anyway mandatory to be taken, their explanation. Then you conclude based on whatever the explanation is given. If it's more of a futuristic assurance they are given, we have no choice, we have to mention that this is what has been given. Common pitfalls, it's more we see, it's the incomplete documentation. Some documents might not be there, some workings will not be there, and as I was telling, some confirmations might be missing. Those are the normal pitfalls what we find. But again, you see, is it in particular engagements or this is a process they are following, then we'll have to clearly tell what is required from the ICA regulation perspective and what they are doing, what they should implement also. Again, I was talking about non-compliance disclosures. When you go through the financials, you will get to know if there are any disclosures issues or that, you can put it across. If I give a simple example, sometimes MSME disclosures will not have been done, or there might be some contingent liabilities, disclosures will not have been done, or the notes or the accounting policy disclosures will not have been, or some wrong references would be there. All this we need to do because again it's a sample verification. When you do a sample verification, it has to be 100% thorough verification. Again, any overlooking independence was there, you can always look at. See, some indication with all of your experience also you will have to use there. If you look at some cases where your audit fees is very low but other services fees are more which should not be, then you also need to understand how is that possible. Because at the end of the day, where is the risk carrying? The risk carrying is more on the audit perspective when you are signing it, not on probably doing some scrutiny assessment or something. It's because there you are not signing, but here you are signing. So like that, you have to be very alert when you are seeing that or any indications are coming in that perspective. Then of course, how are they updated? How is that built in the system is also more important. Again, we dwell in the second part of it where it will talk about your training aspects, what is your updation, is it in-house training, outside training, perfectly okay. Of course, we are all having this option to keep attending the institute programs also where we will get to upgrade. What is more important, you need to see when you review the files, you will come to know. If you are finding it too much errors in the updations, the recent one not captured, now take a scenario tax audit, there are amendments. For some reason, old reports have been issued or audit reports, you see a old report issued. So that's an indication that it's not only an error, the next step you have to go looks like the team are not getting updated for all this. Then where is the training question? Then where is this taken care? Then where is the partner's review? It can go up to that level also. Then how is the partner is not identified by the end of the day who's signing, whose membership is getting at risk. So all this will matter. Any lack of risk assessment, if I give a simple example, when you look at the balance sheet, it's very clear that too much dependency on borrowings are there, the turnover are coming down, the losses are increasing. It should indicate for it. See, again, don't go in a, as I was stating, don't go in a mode that I'm going to do a detailed review. When those indications are there, how is the documentation done by the PU? How is the reporting happening in the audit report? In case it's not getting reported, how are they ensuring the risk is mitigated? How is the risk assessment responses are done? That is what is more important. Because there it's not a question of judgment, because there's nothing called judgment because it's a factual thing. If the dependence is there so much and you clearly see there is a negative net worth, negative cash flow, how are they documenting going concern? What is that they're checking? How is the subsequent part they're verifying? All this you can do it in the sample model. That's where when you look at the samples, because see the advantage is you get the UDIN data also from the PU. You can evaluate, you can see what is the turnover, what is their shareholders fund. All this you will get an idea before even you see the file. So that's what we need to be more process approach in selecting the samples also. Reporting the missing independence documentation. Again, continuous learning. Again, it also covers your how is the CP monitored for the partners, the qualified CS who are there in the firm. All that gets covered in your entire Form 1 and AQMM also. How is that ensure that they are following? How is it getting captured? Your structured program, unstructured program, external speakers, internal speakers. How is the training being done? Does the management get involved in the training? What is the role of the management in the entire training? All that gets covered in this aspect. Then, how is the communication, as we were talking about, how is the communication done by the PU to the client? Is there a proper document, or is it just an Excel file where no idea, client is not aware what is the observation, and you just give a clean report in spite of many findings? All that you can, when you review the file, you will get to know. Again, checklists are important. Whatever the planning checklist, execution checklist, looks to be more theoretical, but those is what is very much required to showcase that the work has been done by the PU. And all this, again, when you go, you have to tell them to show the checklist, how is the document, who has prepared it, who has reviewed it, and how is it, any findings from your preliminary, how you are taking it to the execution, finalization, all that gets captured. Including your final execution checklist in terms of getting all your MRLs on the date of your audit report, any changes, subsequent events, all that how they are documented needs to be seen. Again here, for whatever reason, there is no respite, whether it's a small audits they are handling small private limited partnership firm. Minimum requirement, what is there, has to be there. It could be a non-corporate or a corporate entity, what is required to be documented has to be mentioned. Of course, encourage continuous improvement. Again, not as a PU, as a peer review, I am telling, how is that within the PU they are encouraging improvement. So wherever there are training sessions in-house, how they are allowing even in articles to attend it, and the members who are involved in the audit or attestation function, how they are getting involved, or even if it can be a specific, like if it's a taxation part, how is the tax team getting involved in that? It can go up to that stage also. Again, how you ensure the firm's complaints are taken care. Understand when was the last checklist or whatever the audit manual, what we normally call, was updated. Because you can't have a scenario where you will tell 2 years before it was updated, because law is dynamic, it keeps changing. It could be disclosure, presentation, your entire format of balance sheet or tax audit report, your certificate requirements, or any of the attestation, your 15 CP forms can change based on the regulator's requirement. So what is more important is how often are they revising this checklist? Are they doing it before the season starts, or once the season gets over, go back, update all the checklists, do a training for that, and ensure that implemented. Also you can look at from a firm compliance perspective. Then again, internal quality review. In case it's you get an opportunity to do a fairly bigger firm to do a peer review, take a scenario, there are in audit they have 2 partners. Are they having an internal review among themselves? You can always look, in case it's not recommended. You can assume 10 audits each of the partners are doing. You can tell post-season, why can't you get a review done internally? Can you have a policy for that? And so any gaps are there that it can get addressed then and there. So that's where, as a value addition, a peer reviewer can play that role. And second, it also gives you an insight, why can't we implement this in our firms also, or in our practice also. Again, training in CP, then centralized documentation system. Are they able to retrieve the data when it's required? Because again, when you give a sample, they take time, absolutely fine, but they can't take eternal time. They can't tell, I want 15 days, 20 days, I want 30 days. Because one, there is a timeline driven for us. Second, if that scenario comes, the communication has to go to the peer review board saying that they need extension of time to provide the data with the reasons. For what reason is it, that has to be communicated. But it all depends how they are maintaining the documentation, which you will get to know when you go through the Form 1, AQM and all that. You will get to a complete idea of why the moment you accept the peer review, how much time they take to give you the Form 1 and the Annexure A, and once you give the samples, how much time they take you to give the unit, you will get an idea. Are they organized, or it's going to take time, you'll get an indication there. Of course, I was saying the quality, it has to percolate at the management level. You can't expect an article that they should follow the quality and partners do an exception, because end of the day it has to, through us, of course at the PU level, whoever is in charge for that particular team, it could be audit team or even a non-audit, is it clearly mandated that from the management or the leadership side, this is what is expected of the work quality that will drive the entire quality. Just a conclusion, of course, peer review it's going to be a lot of trust is there, because based on that, IC is going to give a peer review certificate, because the next 3 years, the peer review process will not be there. Again, depending on some of them voluntarily do go for an early peer review, but based on that, it is going to give them the opportunity to pitch in for listed entities, and all of us know some cases it's very vital that a client asks, where is your peer review certificate? What is your ranking in the peer review certificate? So that has a lot of value, and it all depends on what we deliver, what report we give, what we are. So it has the additional responsibility on us in a both way to ensure that you also are maintaining, and another way ensuring that we are also practicing in our work. Again, continuous monitoring, all that, how they are doing, all that you can get to know. Is it only that for the peer review they are prepared for it, or as such that is how they have been having the control system will come. 8 minutes early. Any questions? Or we can break for lunch? Yes.
Because we sent for the peer review or only the
It's only the CA members. So what happens is, now take a scenario, you are allocated a peer review, you can take one CA qualified with you, because the CA qualified who is going to come with you, he also has to give a form 2. It's a form 2 is nothing but here an NDA. It's a confidential, you are signing saying that whatever data you are taking from the PU, it will be maintained confidential. So only qualifieds only can go. No articles in data.
Take assistance of
You can take for certain verification, but normally it is always it's suggested, because anybody who has got an experience, let them do, because anyway we will be there, but certain things verification we need to take their assistance, but at least ensure that some qualified reviews what they have done. So then let us not only depend on them, it will not help. So we can break for lunch, half an hour. We'll assemble back for the next session. Thank you so much. Okay, let's start. And the others will join. So I don't want other speakers to wait for the session to extend. We'll start off. See, next is on the quality control and the compliance with respect to the specific controls on the peer review. Again, it's all talks about the quality control. Quality control, quality management, the PU is taking care of the quality matter, in fact. Ensuring that there is a reasonable assurance on the work quality and the delivery. So again, I think in the first session we talked about the professional standards, ethical requirements and the regulations and the legal requirements, what is required. So I'll move on to the next one. See, these are the 6 components of your entire quality control and the specific controls. As a few of the things I was telling in the first session, the leadership responsibility plays a big role. In fact, if you see your Form 1, apart from all your general details, it starts with the leadership. So it has to start from our side, then it goes on to the other members. So one is a leadership responsibility for what? Quality. Second, it's a ethical requirements, independence, integrity, all that which we were discussing in the first session. Third is more important again, what you call as a client acceptance and continuation, how it is being assessed. Again, it will all this flows from the management side. How is this assessed? How do they take clients, or is it anybody comes, they just take them without assessing the risk aspects and or the other aspect, whether the PU is able to deliver the work to what is expected. All that factors will be there. Each of it will deliberate further as we go on. Fourth, of course, as I was telling, your human resources. It could be recruitment, their work capture, time sheets, which comes as a part of the AQMM, then the training aspect. Of course, as I was telling, the competency. So when you recruit them, how the competencies assessed also gets covered there. Then again, your engagement, performance, planning, supervision, how it has been done, all this gets, so each of the part will have sub-questions which the PO has to respond with a detailed one rather than just saying yes, no, all that. Then finally, the monitoring, ongoing work, whatever the evaluation is there, and the feedback and the inspection part. So to start with basics, as you have all this SQM, earlier it was SQC, now the SQM. The first aspect, what is more important for all of you to understand is from a quality policy, what is that formulated by the PU. So predominantly what is the QC policy they are following and what is the procedure they are going to follow in the entire work execution or engagements, attestations, sign, whatever it could be. First, as I was telling, how is the communication? Is it just there in some soft copy, nobody has got an access or nobody is seeing it, it's not going to help. If I give an example, the best part is whenever you have new members coming into the firm or organization, all this should be made part of them to read it and of course acknowledge it, also saying that they have understood what is required. Of course, apart from all your HR policies and all other things, your quality policy is also very important, because at the end of the day, how the work gets executed is also through them. In case if they do any errors and it just doesn't get identified at the management or the leadership level, all of us know what could be the repercussions of that. Then of course, individual responsibility is also very important. All that becomes part of your quality policy, apart from your independence policy, and how is the compliance is there. So again, what is more important for all of you to need to understand, again from our side also and from the PU side also, it is a continuous exercise. It is not that they just formulated 2 years, 3 years before and it is just lying in somewhere, somebody wherever they want, they just access. It's not going to happen like that. It has to be regularly getting updated, versions has to get documented, and more importantly, how is it each member of the organization is getting to know about the policy. That is more important, and that is where it will assist in the implementation. Again, clear objective explained, what is that each of the, wherever you have various teams to handle, various services are there, what is the objective of those services also should be clearly told. They should be aware of it and they should be documented. So again, wherever, even if you look at the entire Form 1 and the AQMM and all those related annexures, one, it always talks about what is your QC policy. Do you have an independent QC policy, or within the firm you have an inter-QC policy, procedures, implementation done. Apart from that, what is more important is how does the PU takes it in a more appropriate way to rectify it or continue what they have been doing good, and wherever the corrections have to be done, where the implementation, that is also very important. That's where how does the PU has a feedback mechanism also makes a lot of difference to QC, or is it that they just do for the sake of a documentation, internally some QC happens, they take it, they just keep it, or they ensure that there is a specific session, training sessions of the findings of the QC, respective stakeholders are involved in that, made to know that what was the observation of the QC, what should be done, and in the overall at the management level, what is the corrections and implementations that the team is supposed to be taken care. That makes also an important aspect. And of course, as we tell that, have that open communication. How is that you doing this open communication in terms of the feedback for the QCs and ensuring the implementation is done, not just the theoretical aspect. Again, if you look at the implementation guide or the SQC or now the SQM, it more talks about all your independence and entire templates are there. It's not that either when we are doing or we are getting peer review, that's something we like to build, but it's a reference point for us to ensure that this is all documented, implemented in the right way, not just for the sake of the review. So it could be your, as I was talking about the engagement independence confirmation, declarations, annual independence, including the management team. Then you have a model independence policies which gives you guidance on how it should be for the firm. If you want to just implement that perfectly, okay, at least have the bare minimum implementation of those policies. So whenever you go, your task is when you go through the form 1, you list down what all you need. Don't go with just a theoretical explanation as I was telling. List down, okay, when they say we have an independence policy formulated, tell them want to have a copy of independence policy. When was the last updated? How is the tracking done for the obtaining the independence policy? Is it an engagement project? It is an annual exercise. In case there is a conflict, is it all covering under policy? All that you can take the inputs from PE. Then again, your client acceptance, continuations, there are certain of guidelines, how it has to be, even if it's a continuing client, what should be the criteria there. And again, more important, all this has to be a documentation as a part of even an audit also. All this comes in the part of your planning checklist, where if it's a new client, how are you engaging the client, how is that you know that that client is going to fit to the entire value system of the organization or the firm who is going to engage the service. If it's a continuing client, how the evaluation has been done. Normally it's an annual exercise of doing the continuation exercise. It should not be like we have a relationship, they keep continuing. That's not going to happen. You need to ensure that there are certain parameters being reassessed and it is there. That's the reason if you look at some instances where some of the firms, they come out of the engagement only because either the values are not in sync or they are not listening to what is required, a compliance aspect, or for some reason it is not working in the right direction in which it needs to be done, they come out of the engagement. But all this needs to get defined as a checklist. Now this is where you need to see whether at least the minimum documentation the PUs are maintaining with respect to all this client acceptance, or it could be the continuation, independence, all that aspect. Then of course again the planning documentation, what I was telling, how do they document, is there a proper meeting, is it one with the client, understand it's not only the planning documentation doesn't mean only with the client, more importantly within the team who's going to be part of the engagement. Is there a proper briefing about the engagement, expectation, do's and don'ts, what is the risk area, what is the risk assessment done, what is to be focused, what is the timelines, and what needs to be done, is there an independence, all this has to be part of the preliminary and your planning documentation.
In that, do you need a signature of the client?
Not exactly. But there should be a clear evidence that one, there is an internal discussion, and second, wherever you are having, say for example, you have a pre-audit meeting with a client, have the documented, circulated to the client also. Because they would have come up with certain things saying that this is what you have to focus on, new things that has come, which you would have also responded saying this is what we are going to do, then you would have briefed your team also. So wherever you have a client interaction, you can always have a communication, not exactly in a signed way, but at least some sort of a communication, but have the minutes on record, saying that you have met the client, which, because many times what happens, the meeting would have been with a junior accountant. Will not serve because you will not know what is the risk aspect of it, but if in case it's...
Problem comes not with the bigger clients, problem comes with the smaller clients.
Exactly.
They said, sir, we don't ask for everything with the junior project.
So, completely agree, but end of the day, it is we are going to sign, so we'll have to ensure that there is one or the other communication will always be there with the client. Put it across, for example, you would have met them to tell what are the new things is there which they also need to take care. Document that, that's all. that certainly will be part of your planning document. Then of course all your findings and your QCs, and more importantly what is your discussion points, or what we call it as your issue memo or your summary of significant matters, all that. With having a discussion, how they have done the discussion at the right level, how is the conclusion, is it flowing into your reporting or it is getting concluded. All this, of course you have all the templates, but this has to be part of the work papers. Again, what specific controls? Again, what we were also discussing. Again, leadership roles, management, all that, how are they involved? How is a partner involved in the entire work execution makes a lot of difference. Because some cases, there are instances where they just sign and go, that's not going to happen. Because there has to be a proper verification. Have they verified the documents? Have they obtained the necessary document? Because end of the day, whoever is signing, it's a responsibility will fall on them. They can't go and blame. It was presumed that it has been reviewed, and then that's not going to happen. So the responsibility of the partners will also be very evident in the way they give you the details. Then engagement quality review. How is the quality review? Is it only in the end the partners are getting involved, or the seniors are involved, or it's at the regular intervals there are reviews on it? All this, when you go through the Form 1 and the equivalent, you will get a very good idea of how their entire system of quality review is there, who is reviewing at what stage, what is the involvement of the leaders, what is the involvement of the partners, seniors, everything will be very clear in that. But of course, don't only go with the theoretical explanation, you'll have to go when you check your samples, it should be evident there. It can't be that they just theoretically put in a form, and when you see the workings, you don't see there's no proper work papers, no reviews, no sort of a checklist, anything, then there is a gap. Work papers we have talked about, then again restriction also we have talked about the non-audit function. Again reports, whatever the final report comes, how is it evidence? Again going back to the discussions or the significant matters, what they would identify, the conclusion, all that. Is there evidence, or is it just a copy paste of the previous year? You could, when you review it, you will come to it. So we'll just run through each of the 6 aspects of it. Again, when you see the Form 1, all these questions forms part of it. Who is the partner responsible for the QC? Who is the responsible for the quality control? All that has to get defined. It has to be, again, there should be a proper quality control manual defining who is responsible, how it should be ensured that it is being reviewed, implemented, all that. There has to be a proper and a document to that. Then of course, who is ultimately, if anything, quality issue comes, who is the responsible? Is it the managing partner or the concerned partner who is being responsible? All that has to get defined, and all those details also has to be given in the Form 1, and that has to be backed up. How you go to verify that? Go back to ask them to give the SQC or SQM, whichever is the latest one, to give the manual, go through it, you will get to know whether what type of, is it just a document or there is a proper implementation, you will come to know. As I keep telling, at the management level, what tone we set, an entire organization will follow that. Simple. If you are casual or if you are not very serious about documentations or the review, the same thing will percolate. If it's very clear that this is how the quality, there can't be an exception, each of them are responsible to render the work executed, that will define your entire quality control. Again, as I was telling, whenever you are onboarding a new client or it's a continuing client, more particularly onboarding new client, all of us do agree we need more work, we need more clients to execute, but same way, how is their policy for taking new clients is also important. Is it that somebody just calls and they say I'm ready to do, or they call them to office, they go meet them, understand, go through their previous data, or if it's a new company, who are the stakeholders, is there any investments, what business they are into, is it a regulated business, or is it something probability risk factors are more, All that you need to evaluate, and plus you need to know more about the promoters and the management team, where they were. And see, social media digitalization helps you a lot in getting this. Even if you want, if it's a new client, continuing client, it's a matter of getting reports. You subscribe to few of the portal. If I give a simple example, Pro 42 is one aspect where you can get the entire data of the client for sometimes like last 10 years, 15 years. You get to know who are the current directors, management team, ex-management team, what are the related parties, any litigation, legal cases, any cases against the company, any cases from the company, what is their compliance, what is their MSME, everything details gets captured there. Now, take a scenario, you go through that and then go and meet the client, you get more, I will not say comfort, but you are more keen that whether you should take the client or not take the client. So all this is very important, and again what is important, is there a policy followed for this, implemented, and is it getting documented? All details again will flow from the form 1, but go back to check what is that backup document, what is the implementation that done to capture this. In the samples you can always look at, ask them, the new clients, what they have added during the year, how have they onboarded, have they taken basic KYCs from the client before onboarding, how are they maintaining, who is finally approving, or is it a person, the same partner, scenarios where you have multiple partners, is the same partner taking them and approving it, or there is an independent review. All this makes a matter. It's an implementation that needs to be done. Again, frequency, it has to be more periodic. Of course, you can keep revisiting annually depending on what all changes happen. If you take the recent one, not say recent one, the PMLA when it came, that added a lot more responsibility for each of us. Now, how do we capture that? But same way we can't go back and tell that if you don't give this document, I can't onboard you, can't do. But what is basic required, and ensure that some documents are not, they're not willing to give. Clearly take some sort of a communication from them saying that they don't want to share the document, maybe because of the confidentiality, whatever could be there. Independence, we have talked about it. Again, is the fees and the scope, is any probability, because see, the best part is all of you would have your experiences in each of your practices. With that experience, you can always evaluate, is there any fees and the scope in which they are doing, if there is a probability, the fees are too low, but the scope or the risk is very high, you can always evaluate. But end of the day, if any such thing comes, it's always a judgmental call, because it had so much of a contradiction that it should not have come, then we'll have to accordingly put the details. Again, SQC, we have talked, the documentation has to be, we need to have a policy implemented and followed in the entire engagement also. All of us will concur, profitability, professional standards, always balance is quite tough, but irrespective of the whatever you bet, either we have to go back and demand more, but ensure that at any point of time the standards can't be compromised. It has to be managed. Do agree, small clients, proprietary concerns, all that would be there, but that's where we'll have that professional skepticism will come to ensure that what is safeguard to be done from our side, let us do. Same way when you go and look at from a pure perspective, ensure that that is also followed. Most important, again, training. So it could be 5-member, 10-member PU might have. What is the quality of training they are giving? What is the periodicity of training? What type of trainings they are giving? Internal, external, and how they are ensuring that they have a training calendar. In fact, some of the cases when the PU puts in the form 1 and tell that they have such type of training calendar, you can always, you should go back and tell them to showcase that how is the training calendar done. It could be as simple as Excel or through a tool or digitalized, perfectly okay, but get to know that. Again, what's more important for all of us is some good practices any of the PUs are doing, there's nothing stops us also to implement, or it could be the other side, you are implemented, you can always at least guide the PU also do, and then of course whatever we need to take care of reporting, we need to take care.
Here we got a problem. You train them for 9 months. Who is audit is in the leave?
So that's a universal problem. See, end of the day we are constant, that's the only thing. Or at least at the management level we are constant. This is a continuous exercise where you get an indication, get a backup, and that's where we, at our level, we have to have a hands-on on that. That's where when we told that the management tone and the involvement of the partners is important, we can't depend on people, system has to take care, because this is across, it's not only the CA firm, we see in the client place, sometimes work gets delayed because the their team would have changed, same thing happens from our side also, but that's like sort of inherent risk, we'll have to keep reinventing how we can either retain them or keep building the team, have backups so that work never gets suffered and we get compensated also for that. Of course, again, the most important is your quality standards. How are you making aware? It could be the new as well as well. See, it's not only when at the induction you need to, they should have done it, even there should be some sort of a refresher. Or if I give a simple example, a lot of code of ethics seminars, you can make them part of it. Are they doing it at the internal speaker, external speaker? See, nothing stops. It's a matter of 1 hour, half an hour. See, end of the day, it's all our responsibility to ensure that we are safeguarded when we sign. So all these are mandatory requirements to be taken care. And how is a PU is doing that? It's what we need to understand. As I told, the first day we'll make all this. This is where you should inquire, understand, get the details. That will give you the foundation for the review of the documentation. Again, it goes to your, in fact, if you go through the entire Form 1 and the even it talks about your performance management. How is the performance management? How is the recognition done for the good members who are performing consistently? Better if somebody is not doing well, how are they retaining, continuing with them, or they are taking calls to say that no, this way quality can't suffer. All this matters. And again, all these are part of your HR policy, which most of the PUs will have at least a basic documentation they should have. Again, can't be too much oral. And how is this being done? How is that, the entire management system is being done, how they do the rating, not only the salary hike what they give, but the entire process of ensuring that the quality of work is taken care of. Because all this revolves around your quality end of the day. Of course, one on the tangible side, intangible side, always ethical and behavior, because see, always the trust factor has to be built, because they go to the client place, they are on the ground. We have to ensure that they don't do any unethical thing, because end of the day, who's going to be answerable is we assume. So that's how we'll have to evaluate how they are ensuring the culture is built in the organization to whoever they're in the organization, they are representing all of us. Again, monitoring review mechanism, all that I have covered up on the QC. And again, of course, is there any instance of QC overriding? We'll have to see how is that taken care, because there has to be some specific responses to this, because you can't tell there is no such instances also. There could be a probability, but how is the PU giving the responses? You will have to evaluate that also. I think most of this we have covered on the independence evaluation. Again, list of because here the entire aspect is on the independence declaration, ethical behavior of the entire PU team. And in case any changes are there, so you need to have a clear case. If I give a simple example, do the PU have a complete list of the clients? What type of services are they are handling? Because the more why it's required is, that's why you come to know that there is no conflict of interest, and more particularly if there are teams across states, across places. Now, sometimes there is a probability the other team who is there in another state, they might not know which client they are handling, then the conflict should not arise. Now, how are they ensuring? You can always look at their way of monitoring again at the leadership level. Again, as I was telling, whenever there is a engagement partners involved in the entire work, the briefing, what they do at the beginning of the engagement, it also makes a difference, because end of the day, it is the partner or the leadership who would be directly face to the client. They would be meeting them, they will be understanding, they'll know the expectation, they'll know the risk, what can be done, what can't be done. It would be at that level, they'll be aware of it. How is that being informed to the client, to the members of the engagement team is also important. How are they doing all this? Then again, training programs, again, as I told, it could be the independence, code of ethics, how they are taking, or they are making them to attend some of the seminars where all this is there, and how it is being in-house training being done. All this you can evaluate when you do the review. Again, independence that I have explained about the declarations, either engagement wise or the annual exercise. More again, continuing on the independence, it's more on the financial interest in the audit. This all gets captured through your independence policy, the communication. More important, how the members are aware of this is what, because literally day in and day out you can't keep monitoring whether anybody has an interest on that. It is ensuring that you have a system inbuilt to have a policy implemented to ensure that any such interest gets threat, it is communication comes to the management team. Ethical policy, I've talked about it, and again the rotation of the senior, I was mentioning about partners rotation. It's always a good practice. Do they have a senior? As sir was telling, there is a probability if somebody leaves, it's a mandatory rotation. But wherever there is a continuity, don't have that self-interest. Always make it sort of a policy, because many times, lot of things, it's not in a good or a bad way. The quality will always improve in that way. The new spectacles will always bring in new things, which might have been due to the I would say comfort zone, it could have got messed out, but have that rotation. Do they have a policy? Are they implementing? Again, two things. One, a policy, implementation. Both has to go hand in hand. Declaration, I've spoken, annual declaration I've covered, compliance on sign-off. Again, just to give a simple example, when you say an engagement partner, compliance on the deliverables, all that. Now, when it finally comes to the partner's signature, how is he going to sign? Is he going to see the entire documentation signed? Because already the review would have been done from him. What I meant to say is, does he see the entire set of documents, including representations and whatever requirements is there for him to sign? Do they have that sort of a documentation to ensure that the sign-off and the partner does? He's got a complete list of documentations to sign. So that when you review the samples of the audits, you will come to know, is it in a proper way? Do they have a signed documents? Are there MRLs? Sometimes you will be surprised, you will find cases where these documents would be missing, not only because it could have got misplaced, for some reason might not be obtained. That's where it will indicate that what is the quality system in place. Is it they're just depending on members to collect it, or who's the engagement partner is taking care of all this before he signs off? I think all this limits, it's all part of your appointment formalities also. To take the consent letter, the ICA limitations, all that will get covered. Again, tax audit, now it's all getting more through the urines, it's going to get captured. You will have to only see whether do they have all this in place as a part of the policy or the communication, because end of the day all this is at the leadership or the management or the partners level, this will be executed. So no other members will be signing these documents. And all we know, prohibition of indebtedness, all that should not be there, how this has been taken care. Again, more importantly, one, at the management level, it has to be implemented, because without that you can't expect an article or a qualifier to come back and say that there is a payable amount to or a receivable amount to a partner in the client. That should not be the scenario. It should not lead into that scenario. Minimum audit fees, and this is another part. You can always look what I was mentioning. When you review their balance sheet, when you see the disclosures, see What's the audit fees? When they say other services, inquire what were the other services. In case it's more than the other services, you need to understand, is it a conflict? Is it a wrong disclosure? Sometimes it will do happen, because what happens for the client, stat auditor, internal auditors, GST auditor, or whoever is there, for him is everything one. They go and put everything into the payment to the auditors, because for him all auditors are same. But as a stat auditor, normally what is your statutory and tax audit is what should get disclosed. Other fees whom they are paying for other consultants should come under probation. So understand this aspect also, because if there is any non-compliance, the question comes, then how did this got reviewed? Why did it got missed out? Again, tender, I think Ayush also was covering, if any tender client, what you need to get to know the details, because that anyway get disclosed in your form 1, and the details you need to cover it as a part of your samples and understand how did they get the tender, what is the work they have executed.
So you have review on 1 rupee tender. You have review on 1 rupee tender.
I've heard about one case in fact. It was a client where they have, but of course not a CF firm. But again, that the question comes, then why did they accept it? Because leave out 1 rupee, even if it's a fees which is not considered, or take a scenario, they have charged less than the previous auditors. And the question comes, why did they, on what basis? See, it's not that it is a wrong selection, but we need to understand how have they documented in the acceptance of the client.
Earlier there was a thing, you should not take less than the previous tender. Now it is not taking, most of the multinational taking less than the normal CST.
See, that's where exactly when they have the client acceptance, how are they mentioning this? Why are you accepting that? See, it's not that you are undercutting. There is a probability your efficiency is much better than who is doing earlier. Or the cost of the earlier, that's where many of the clients move on. When they feel the cost is very high from any of the earlier firms, they always look for a better efficient firm. That's where we have to mention that I'm not doing an undercutting, but my efficiency and this is my process of rendering work where I'll be able to make profit in that also.
That is only for 1 year, afterward it goes with the other.
See, once you get a confidence, then you should demand. Again, in fact, it talks about the guidelines for the website. So, again, go through the website. See, these are all your preliminary work you can do. It hardly takes a couple of minutes. When you know this one, go to the website, understand who are the partners, what type of clients they handle, and what all details is there. You get a fair idea about the PO also. Again, I think most of the things are covered on how the entire decision. See, even when there is a rejection of the client, it needs to get mentioned. Why is rejection is getting happened? Maybe some cases it might be that too many qualifications are there in the previous audit report, or there are delays in audits getting signed off or the filing non-compliance. Nothing stops from you not accepting. Document it, saying that this is why we are not accepting the client. Again, second part, what I was telling, it is not only that they fill in, the documents should also be maintained. So whatever the retention, all that, whatever they would have filled in the details, obtained the documents from the client, onboarding, continuing client, it has to be maintained also. Not only for the peer review purpose, for their quality management perspective also. Again, in case any withdrawal from assignment, because this is one of the questions it comes also, saying that in case you have withdrawn from any assignment during the year, that means you have been appointed for some reason, or whatever the reason, you are not going ahead and signing the audit, you are resigning, there has to be a document, so they have to give details also, what was the entire background in which this has arisen and why did they resign, because that entire details has to be there in your entire quality policy also. And here what will happen, it will also depend whether it was an individual, one partner has taken a decision or this was a entire partners took a call considering all 1, 2, 3 parameters and took a call saying that they don't want to continue in the engagement or they want to withdraw from the assignment. I think most of them are quite straightforward. Background checks, as I was telling, you can always get data from the online. Then integrity of client, because most cases you can get it through either the social media or we need to put little effort to all this. Whether are they doing, you can always look at, of course not for small clients, but wherever they get some bigger clients, how are they engaging them or accepting the engagement. Communication with the previous, all this has to be there as a part of their documentation. Risk evaluation has talked about, and the KYC norms also have talked about. More important this aspect also, because many cases we, at least some of us would have countered this. The client would have engaged some firm, for some reason they have given a wrong advice, they have incurred huge penalty, all that, then they change the entire consultant. The more important from a PO perspective, what is there, how is that when you talk about the client acceptance and the continuation, or whenever new work comes. Now, if I give a simple example, India's transition is there. Now, is the firm had the capability to take is also important. Why? Because if they have helped them in getting the entire transition done, the disclosures presentation something has gone wrong, then who is going to be blamed? So that it goes back to their capabilities, that goes back to the team who was part of it, how they are trained. Again, all this will be a part of their policies, and details have to come from the PO only. All through your Form 1 and AQMM. That's the reason all of us are emphasizing these are your basic foundation documents. Once you read it, you will get to know at least 50% of the entire PU, how they are functioning.
Is the reviewer, is he required to just review the manuals and ascertain whether the manual contains provision for all this, or is he required to test the capability of the firm?
We need not test the capability, but how are they ensuring this is implemented? So one, if you have a policy, will not help. How is this been implemented, and how frequently they are ensuring this has been completed? Because team keeps changing. Now that's where we'll have, when you go back to your samples verification, you'll have to see all this. Whether they, because see, capability we also will not be able to assess, because one, it's a post facto. Now that team member might be there, might not be there. It's all end of the day. Now you take a scenario, for some reason they have not been able to sign the audit. Now the question comes, was it, generally it's a delay from the client. Now there is a probability CFO, the PO was not able to deliver it on time, they had to engage somebody and get it closed, might be there. So we had to only look at whether they have that policy implemented to take care, covering this aspect, and how is that getting educated to each of the members. That could be sufficient to ensure that the capabilities, or if I give a simple example, how are they recruiting? So this is where when you talk to them, get their HR policy, all that, do they have some sort of what is the recruitment, what do you call the phases? Apart from HR, is there a partner involved in the interviews, or who does the interviews? All that will make a difference, because are you getting a right candidate to the firm, and ensuring that he follows the value system will all be there.
Sir, one question. Regarding HR policies, most of the firms, they go by informal way of recruiting personnel who are usually freshers. They are not paid any wages or given any appointment letter. In such cases, how to assess their capabilities? Because they will be saying, we have five employees, 5 staff, but in documentation, if you see, that doesn't exist. How to handle such issues?
See, one, if it's if they have a CA employed, the details they have to give it in Form 1. They'll have to tell during the period of the peer review who are the CA got engaged in the firm, between what period to what period to the. See, apart from that, if it's any semi-qualified, all that, it's only based on probably the payroll records is what they are making. Of course, we will not have access to the payroll records. It's only in terms of what type of work they are handling. When you see, how you can judge this when you review their samples will come to know. Are the right type of team got engaged into it, or was it just some article did and there was no proper review even at the partners level? It would be very evident from the deliverables what would have been signed. That's how you can get to know. Apart from all your policies, all that, see, do agree some small firms they might not have a simple policy. That's where we can recommend saying that these are all required to be, because see, where do I get the inputs? the input comes from their side only. Now if they say there is no policy, then how are they monitoring? That should be our next question, saying that okay, you agree at your level you don't have a policy. How are you monitoring the quality aspect? How you are monitoring the quality control? How are you reviewing the work of the members? Because they can't tell no, this just happens. So they have to explain how it is being done. Might not be in a written form, but you will get the inputs based on, go back and review your samples. Then you will come to know is it really followed, or there are a lot of gaps in the work execution or the quality of the work. So again, what I was telling, assessing ability to meet the deadlines, all this gets covered in the work what they do, and of course what quality control they have implemented. Again, the hiring process, what I was talking about, what are the phases of hiring, who does the interview, where the inputs are captured, in case they don't have a dedicated HR team, even if anybody who does the first round of interview, is there at least somebody at the senior partner at least meets them, do some sort of an interview, because at least not at the article level or that, but in case they are engaging somebody senior to the team or a qualified CA, how is the recruitment process? You can always also, again, all this, they have to come back and give you the document, which they have to fill all this in the form 1 also in elections. Now you have to go back after reading and check how is this been documented. Is it just they're telling like that, or there is a proper system to capture, there are interview evaluation forms, not only the salary aspect, they are understanding from where they are coming, are they checking the previous employment, they are taking the documents of their experience, all that will be forming part of this. See, background check and maintenance of joining checklist, all that. See, all this, wherever we are doing audit, we always insist for the client, or when we go, we check all this. We ask them, where is your KYC, have they got the experience certificate, all that we ask them. But same thing, one, it's an implementation for us also, and when we go for the PLP, we have to check all these aspects also. Because again, the resources who you recruit will ultimately decide your quality management also.
So you will be sharing this key, sir?
Yeah. Institutes. Yeah. Again, it also asks about your ratios. How is your ratios of your qualified to non-qualified, to the partners, staff versus non-staff. All these details are there. You always evaluate, and when you meet them, get to know all this. Understand what, even see if it's a 10, 20 members are also there, get to know, is there, how many graduates are there, how many articles, anybody who has completed CA Inter is continuing, qualified how many are there, or some senior other than non-qualified are there. Get to know, because that will also help you to know how should your extent of verification has to be done. I think majority of this I have covered in terms of the selection of the team and the partner. Again, talking about is even at the partner level, are they competent to do the job? Annual evaluation, I think all this I have covered already. This again, a training aspect was I was talking about. Again, the CP requirements of the IC also needs to be verified. They need to give you the data, and that's where it will give you get an understanding. Apart from the management team, how much training they are giving it to the members who are part of it. Predominantly the qualified CAs. Is it internal training, external training? They are allowed to attend seminars. All this gets covered part of this, including the technology, what technology the implementation doing, what softwares they are using, and how they are training, how they are implementing this to the members also. Most of them are again covered, again assigning responsibility for the work execution, your staffing, time, cost, how is that monitored. In fact, if you read the AQMM, it has got a specific points on the timesheets. It says, is the timesheets maintained, or in case you don't have a timesheet, what is an alternate procedures to ensure that you are monitoring the time? Because this is where at the level or the leadership level, this makes a lot of difference, because how are they monitoring the work? Because end of the day it is the fees. Is it commensurate with the cost what you are incurring? Are they monitoring the quality of the work, ensuring timelines are met? All this gets covered in this entire engagement evaluation. Of course, you can always see a pre-audit what I was talking about, and the risk assessments, how it's getting assessed at each level. Then how do they have a standardized checklist and questionnaire? How often it is getting revisited? How is the documentation? Is it form parting of the audit work papers? Findings, as I talked about, significant issues, TCWG communication. Then your supervision of workings. All this, there has to be a trail also, because there are a couple of points which talks about the partner's involvement in the entire review exercise also. Again, high risk, what even Aish was also mentioning, the listed entity EQCR. So when you get the data, end of the day, in the listed entity, mandatory gets picked up for peer review. Anywhere voluntarily they have an EQCR, or for a high risk client they have an EQCR, pick those as a part of sample, because there are certain specific review documentation trail has to be kept, that there has been an independent EQCR review also been conducted. I think more or less, more of a summary, the integrity of the information, your prevention of unauthorized changes. Unauthorized changes means after every sign off, some details are getting changed. That can't happen. Then all your password encryption, backup of the documentation, retention policy, all the retention. And as I was telling, retrieving of the data is also important. More important, if it's you're doing for a proprietor or a small firm, this is something you'll have to get it very clear at the beginning. How is their retrieval policy? How fast they will be able to retrieve the data for your sample selection. That would be more important. It could be your workings or whatever they'll have for the audit documentation process. Quality check, I think summarized, already covered as part of your high risk assessment, and those transactions, whatever is there, how it is getting covered, documented. When you review your samples, you will come to know your QC review, if there is any QC done for your samples, review those reports, who has done, in-house, outside consultant, get those data, review it, and keep it as a document with you. I think this is the last one. Again, summarizing finally the monitoring procedure, how is it being done and how the entire engagement is getting monitored, documented, the correspondence of all your independence, integrity, ethical thing, your training, checklist, everything gets finally done. And as I was telling, even it goes to the extent of feedbacks on the training. Whenever there was a training by external speakers coming into the PU, they have taken sessions. How was the feedback? Was there some sort of a assessment done after the training session to ensure that it has been in the right spirit? All that gets covered here. QCs are covered. Done.
Members, therefore, formally conclude. There is a QR code displayed for feedback. Thank you, sir, for joining us on the special day. On behalf of Bangalore branch of ICA and management members of ICA and members present here, I thank you for the wonderful session and request our chairman to present the memento as a token of appreciation.